Hilches Mikvaos. Now the regular Lashon, the way it is in the Rambam, in the printed Rambam, is always Hilches Mikvaos. But in the Rambam, in Frankel Rambam and other Rambams which are more meduyik, the Lashon Rambam is Hilches Mikvaos. So the Lashon Yochid in the Torah is Mikva, Mikvei Hamayim, and the Lashon Rambam is Mikvaos. Hilches Mikvaos, mitzvahs asay achas v'hi, sheyidbil kol tamid b'mei mikvah v'achar kach yitar. So from this Lashon, sheyidbil kol tamid b'mei mikvah, it sounds like that there is a chiyuv, someone that's tamid to go into the mikvah. But it's clear, and the Rambam writes clearly, that there's no chiyuv for a tamid to be tovel in a mikvah. In other words, except there's beregel, there's a din of chayiv l'tayr atzmei beregel. But generally, there's no chiyuv to be l'tayr atzmei to go to the mikvah. The mitzvah is that if a person wants to become Torah, so the way to become Torah is go through going into a mikvah. And that's many mitzvahs like that. Like, for example, the mitzvah of gerushin. That there's no mitzvah, one of the mitzvahs shegarish with a get. But over there also doesn't mean that there's a mitzvah to be megarish. It means someone that's megarish, yigarish, megarish, he should megarish with a get. When he's being megarish, in order for the get to to actually be a gerushin, it has to be megarish with what we call a get. So Aldero's over here. The pshat is that in order for a person to become Torah, the way to become Torah is by going into a mikveh, and that's in itself called a mitzvah. Some of those of the Tariq mitzvahs are such mitzvahs where the gather of the mitzvah is that this is the way this takes effect. Nachamal mitzvahs aseyachas v'hi sheyidbil kol tamid mikveh v'achar kach yitar. The Torah takes effect through the fact that he was table in a mikveh. Bir mitzvah zuhe prokamelu peirik rishon kol atmeim bein adam ben kelim. And Ben Shinitmu Betumah Chamur Shel Teira, he became Tommy Shel Teira. Even if he became the Marshal, he'd be a person that's a Tmei Mes. So Einachanami, he needs also Hazor Shlishi Ushvi, but they also need a Tefillah. That's the din of Tefillah now. There is a Nida and a Zova, so they all need Tefillah. So they need maybe Sfira Zayin Nikim, but Kol HaTmeim, whether we're talking about a Tumah Chamur Shel Teira, or Ben Shinitmu Betumah Shel Devrayim, is Ein Lam Tara Ela B'Tefillah. And tefillah means b'mayim hanikfim b'karka. There has to be mayim hanikfim, which means they're gathered, as opposed to zeichalin, and it should be nikfim b'karka. It should be gathered in the karka, not in the keli. It has to be mayim hanikfim b'karka. Halacha beis. Kol hakelim shnitmu yesh lam tara b'mikvah chutz mikli cheres ukli schuches v'chein hamapetz. These three kelim, kli cheres, kli schuches, and mapetz, don't have a tara b'mikvah. Now, Kli Cheres Namer Beveisa Shishberu. The Torah clearly writes that with Kli Cheres that became Tomei is Veisa Shishberu has to be broken. Ve'enli Tara, there's no way of being Matara Kli Cheres. Ela Shvira, only by breaking the Keli. That's how the Tumah goes off the Keli. Masha'enki in any other way, there's no musig of Tefillah b'mikvah. Afilu chirbi b'karka, v'afilu kavi b'masmer. You took a nail, you connected to the karka, v'afilu melo sid, a gifsis, or you filled up this keli klicheres with lime or with plaster, is lechur, it's all filled, so it became uis keli. Nevertheless, harehu kemei shahaya. So the keli still remains a keli which is tummy, even though lechur it's a not functional keli anymore. But nevertheless, it remains a tummy dika keli, achi yishaver, unless the keli is broken. That's been the geya klicheres. Now, kli schuches, a glass keli, is klicheres, asum medavar zeb. The emes of klicheres is a klischuches is not mekabel tumim and atera. The only reason why a klicheres is mekabel tumim is only midrabanan, because since it's dumya to klicheres, that it comes minachel, so alder so chacham instituted that there should be tumah for klicheres. Now this tumah, so just like it's mekabel tumah like a klicheres, so alder zeh there's no tara b'mikvah like a klicheres midrabanan. Halacha dalet hamapatz. Mapatz is a mat. Is any bechlal hakelim hamekab mishar kol atumas lefish any klei kibul. So when the Torah writes about the kelim, it speaks about a klietz and a klicheres, a klietz and a sak and other kelim. So when the Torah speaks about the kelim, the mapetz is not included in those kelim that the Torah speaks about. Any bechlal klietz or amurim b'Torah, because we learn from Chazal that a klietz means only a klietz which is a mekabel, which is dumya de sak. The sak is a mekabel. A klietz that the Torah talks about a klietz as a makabel. So what's the mocker? If the klietz that the Torah is talking about is a klietz as a makabel, so what's the mocker that a mapetz is makabel tumah? V'heil v'hu roi l'mishkav. Since a mapetz is roi l'mishkav, So therefore, it was nisraba letumas medrash bilvad in Torah. So Minatera was nisrabe letumas medrash. So that's Shittas Rambam that a mapas we learn out that kol ashiyirkev we learn out a special limud that it's that something that's roy lemerkev is mekabel tuma even though it's not a kli kibul. So Memela we learn out that a mapitz is mekabel tuma, but according to the Rambam, a mapitz is taka only mekabel tumas medrash. It's not mekabel tumas of being neged shar tumas. We mentioned it's machlekes rishenim. But hail v'uroi lemishkav nisraba l'tumas medrash bilvad din Torah. The kivin she'en l'tumah v'tara b'ferish. So in other words, the musig of tumah v'tara really doesn't say b'ferish. In other words, by kalim there's a din that says the tumas of kalim, and then there's a din of the tara of kalim. A mapitz is not a keli. A mapitz is not really a keli. It's just it was nisraba l'tumah, even though it's not a keli, but it was nisraba l'tumah because it's roy lemishkav. So Memela, so since it's not a keli and it was only nisraba l'tumah because roy lemishkav, so it's not bichlal taras kalim. You know, there's a din of tumas kalim and there's a din of taras kalim. So a mikveh refers to the kalim that have tumas kalim and have taras kalim. Masha'ink and a mapit, since it doesn't have tumas, that's the way the Rambam is being masbret. A Rambam, a mapis is not bechal tumas kalim, it's not a keli, and therefore it's not mekabel tuma like a keli. It's only metam bekubal, it's mishkav. So Mele, it's also not bechal taras kalim. That's what I'm saying. The kivin she'en li tuma v'tara b'ferish v'nisraba l'tuma, but nevertheless li yisraba l'tor b'mikvah. This ribut, there's the ribut that is mekabel tuma is taka mekabel tuma, but as far as being mistair, it's not nisraba l'tuma. She'en mistair b'mikvah la kalim amurim b'teira. Those kalim that are amurim b'teiras, the Torah says that those kalim are mekabel tuma, and the Torah also says that those kalim you can be matar b'mikvah. Be'ela mapetz tara ela kriyasi. The only way a mapetz could become Torah is only through tearing it. Achi yishor pakas mishish al shishat fachim, because the shear of a mapetz has to be shish al shishat fachim. So when it becomes less than shish al shishat fachim, then it's makabel tuma. Then it loses its shem tuma. It's nachamo. Kalim are all kalim you could be table in a mikvah, except for klicheres, especially in yeshavet al deras eklischuches. So the chacham, when they instituted the din of tumas by negeh klischuches, so they gave it a din legabi this din like a klicheres that it can't be nistar b'mikvah. And the negeh a mapitz is not really a klietz that the Torah talks about, which the Torah talks about the kalim have a tara b'mikvah. By mapitz there's a special riba since it's royal mishkav, so therefore it's mekabel tumas mishkav. So inochinami legabi this din taka mapitz was nistar that it's metami tumas mishkav. But legabi the din of tara, which that din is only a din by kalim, so that's not part of the din of tum and tara's kalim, and therefore there's no tara b'mikvah. Halacha hey hazov ainli tara ela b'may. By hazov there's a special din. Although the Rambam started off that all tveim could be nistar b'mikvah, but the zov is an exception. Ainli tara ela b'mayon. Shari nemer, but it says clearly b'mayim chayim. But that din has only been a hazov. Aval hazova u'sh'ara tmeim bein odem and kalim is tevel ma'ab b'mikvah. You don't have to be tevel in a mayon. You can be tevel in a mikvah. Halacha vav. Now kol chayvi tfilis tfilosen bayim. Chayvi tfilis are tfilosen bayim chutz min nida v'yuledes shetfilosen balayla k'mishibiyanu ben yenida. And when it says that kol chayvi tfilis tfilosen bayim, doesn't mean that you have to be tevel bayim. This is on a minatera dika level. It means that those tmeim that there's an Indian of waiting 7 days, for example, a zava or a mitzera, all these people that have to wait 7 days until to be able to affect their tara in tefillah, so they can be tevel on the 7th day. They don't have to wait until the night after the 7th day. Masha en al derazeh a tful yem that has to wait. I'm not a tful yem. I mean a shemeres yem keneged yem. So shemeres yem keneged yem also she could be tevel on the day that she shemeres. Masha'enken when we're dealing with a nida which has to wait 7 days. Now that is a yeledes which has to wait 7 days. So over there the tefillah which comes after 7 days is the night after the 7 days. So she has to be tevel the night after the 7 days. Now that is a yeledes has to be tevel the night after the 7 days. That's this din. Kol chayvi tefillas, all chayvi tefillas are tfilasen bayim. Chutz min nida v'yeledes. Shetfilosen balayla k'mishibiyana bin yenida that she's tevel the night after the 7 days. Now, the day after the 7 days, on the 8th day, on a Menatera level, she could also be table. Midrabanan, she shouldn't be table on the 8th day. Mitzad Chashash, she may be table on the 7th day, except in special extenuating circumstances where it's hard to be table by night, because the night the mikvah is l'chutz la'ir, or such circumstances. So then you could be matter to be table by day. Masha'inkin, normally a nida and a yeledis has to be table at night. But the point of this the word is that a nida and yeledis, what the Ram is saying over here is she has to wait for the following night, and know she can't be table on the 7th day. Nachamo. Kol chay v'tvilas tvilasim bayim chutz min nida v'yeledis shetvilasim balayla k'misha b'yana ben yenida ubal keri, a person that's a balkeri is table v'helach kol ayim kulei mit chilas halayla. No, let's say if a person saw keri in the beginning of the night, so right after he saw the keri, he could be table. Shenamar. Now the pasuk says v'hoyu lefneis erev yirches b'mayim melamed shetable v'helach mitchilas halayla ad erev shemesh. Not so clear what's the raya from the pasuk. In other words, the pasuk basically is saying that a person, in order to become Torah, it's not enough he should go into the mikveh, but he also has to have erev shemesh. So as long as he goes to the mikveh before night, so that's l'chura the pashta pshat v'hoyu lefneis erev, when it's becoming night. So then it's yirches b'mayim, and then when it comes erev shemesh, he becomes completely Torah. He becomes no longer a tful yem. He becomes a completely Torah. Now the Ram is saying melamed. So what's the melamed? V'hoyu lefneis erev means when it comes before night. But ain't a chenamel. It might have kamina if it's before night or the night before. The main point is that he has to be toivel, and then the following night, so he becomes Torah. Something to say lefneis erev. Lefneis erev means lefneis is also a lashon laila. Lefneis erev means the laila before the laila. That's not the pashta pshat. Shem v'hoyu lefneis erev yirches b'mayim melamed shetevel v'helach mitchilas halayla ad erev shemesh. Al kol parim, anyone that doesn't have to count any days, that person can be table any time from the night until the following night, and then when it comes the following night, so then it becomes erev shemesh. I'm not clear what's this chidush of v'hoyu lefneis erev yirches b'mayim melamed shetevel v'helach mitchilas halayla ad erev shemesh. Now, b'negea, let's say a tmei mes which has to wait 7 days. So over there, the Rambam paskins that he can't be table on the night going into the 7th day, because he has to be table on a time when he's roya ready lahazor. The hazor is only by yom hashlishi b'yom hashvi. So the hazor has to be by yom hashvi. So on the yom hashvi, that's when he can be table. Masha'inkan will be table the night before. So then that's not good. That's not enough of a tefillah. And the Ravid argues on this. The Ravid holds that you could be table also, even a tmei mes can be table also by yom hashvi, the night going into the shvi. Halacha zayin. Kol ha-toivel tzorach sheyitbil kol gufei kshu orum bebasachas. The tefillah has to be, first of all, he has to be toivel kol gufei at one time. He has to be toivel one gufei. He can't be toivel, let's say, one half of his body and then be toivel the other half of his body. At one time, he has to be toivel his entire body, and also kshu orum when he's not wearing any clothes. The imhoye bal seir is yadbil kol sa'areshi. All the hair of his head has to go into the water. That any piece of his hair that's sticking out of the water is mevatel the tefillah. The chol atmeim shenitbol b'bigdeim. So lechatchila you're supposed to be table kshehu arim without clothes. But chol atmeim shenitbol b'bigdeim, those tmeim that were nitbol while wearing the clothes, is also lam tefillah. Lepel the tefillah was a kosher tefillah. Why? Because generally water goes through the clothes, and the person was entirely immersed, and the water was actually touching him. Is muteres l'mayla, because again, lechatchila, the tefillah should be, as he said before, kshuar. Masha'inkin, if lepel, they would table with their clothes, so since lepel, the water went in, so therefore she's muteres l'mayla, and all that is that the tefillah was also. Halacha ches. Kol ha-toivel, sorech le'ischaven l'tefillah. It's also a lechatchila dekadin, that when a person is table, he should be mischaven, that he's going to be table, and through the tefillah he's going to become Torah. V'im lein ischaven, but if the person wasn't mischaven, is also a tefillah l'chulin. As far as chulin is concerned, it is also a tefillah. We'll learn, but again, truma and kachim, we learned already in the past, that over there you have to have kavana. That knows even if a person had kavana l'chulin, and he didn't have kavana l'truma, or he had kavana l'truma, he didn't have kavana l'kachim, so the tefillah wasn't a good tefillah. But as far as chulin is concerned, the tefillah is a good tefillah even without any kavanah. Afilu nida shetovel b'lei kavana k'ni shenovel nofel techamayim. A yard the lahaker, she went in lahaker. Nevertheless, arei zu muteres l'bayla. Avalutum v'kotchev. In order to be Torah l'truma l'kotchim, you have to have kavana, not stam kavana of tefillah. You have to have kavana that you're being teva l'truma or being teva l'kotchim. Halacha tes. Hakefis yadav v'raglo. A person ties his hands and feet, or v'yoshev le'ba'amas hamayim, and he's sitting in a channel of water, a water which could be kosher as a mikveh. Let's say a natural channel of water, but I'll call upon water which is kosher as a mikveh. Is im nichnus umayim derech kulei tor. If pale, the water went over all of him. In other words, he was completely immersed in the mikveh tor. So even though his hands were tied, but lepel, if the water went into all of him, so he's tor. Hakoifetz l'techa mikveh is hareze meguna. Person jumps into a mikveh is hareze meguna, and va'atevel pamayim b'mikveh is also hareze meguna. All these three things are meguna. So what the three things is kaifetz l'techa mikveh, or tevel pamayim b'mikveh, or someone tells his chaver kvesh yadecha alai b'mikveh. In Kesmishna it says that the reason is because it looks like he's not doing it l'shem mikveh. In other words, when a person is kaifetz l'techa mikveh, that's like a way a person like jumps into just a pool of water. And now that as that person goes in twice, so it doesn't look like he's going to be tevel. If he's going to be tevel, why did he do it twice? Now that is he tells someone kefetz yadav, so it looks like it's being done l'schoik and for entertainment. And therefore, if a person is going to look at it, he's not going to see that he's having kavana. And mele if it's lekotchim or letrumas, so mele it doesn't look like it's having kavana. That's the chsaron. The chsaron over here is that these three things is not. It's keilu looks like they don't have kavana. That's what it comes out from the Kesef Mishnah. In Shulchan Aruch it's brought down that this din is only when there's exactly 40 saw, because there's this concern that through being koifetz you can lose some of the water, and al derech zeh you table twice. I'll call upon this din is only when you have arboim saw mitzum tzomis. Masha'inkin, if you have a regular mikveh with more than arboim saw mitzum tzomis, so this din is not there. I'll call upon it because Mishnah over here it seems to be saying that the reason is because it looks like you're not having kavanah. And Shulchan Aruch seems to be saying that the reason is because we're dealing with our boim som mitzum tzomis. The Rambam it doesn't say either. The Rambam doesn't say that it's either. The Rambam just says this din that it's harei zemaguna. Halacha yud. Beis hastorim, a place where it's a closed place in the body, or beis hakmotim, or a place where there's folds in the body. Beis hastorim would be like, let's say, in the mouth. The mouth is a place which is a closed place in the body, and al derech beis hakmotim is a place where a person has. The body has folds, so therefore normally water wouldn't come in there. That the water should actually come into side the Beis Hastorim or side the Beis Hakmotim. So if we learn now from the words v'yodav l'shatav b'mayim, evarim hanirim bilvad, that we're talking about that the only thing that has to touch the water and go into the water, be exposed, be actually come into contact with the water, is only the shota b'mayim has to be only yodav evarim hanirim bilvad. But afal pikein tzrichim liyis ruyim shevei b'mayim. So even though the pale mamish there doesn't have to be water there, but it has to be ruyim shevei b'mayim. There shouldn't be anything that's separating between the water and that area in case the water would go in. That she should wash the area between the kmotim, between the folds in the body, and only then she should be table. Because lepel, even though lepel b'teicha kmotim, the water doesn't go in, but it has to be in a matzav that water is roy to go in, which means that she washed that area, and therefore there's no chtzitzes there, and water is roy to go in. V'hoisha tiveles kederab delas. A woman is tevel like her normal way, which means she has folds in her body. She doesn't have to pick up those folds. Those folds in her body remain as they are, and it's irregus, like when she's weaving. Now, when she's weaving, she's raising her right arm and her underarm. The Beis Hashechi is revealed, and also Kaminikes B'no, when she's nursing her child, so she's raising part of her breast in order to be able to nurse her child. So that area should also be raised when she goes to the mikveh. That part should be revealed. Halacha Yudalev. Isha Eina Tivel is benomal. A woman shouldn't be Tevel in a harbor, place where the ships come in. Mipnei Shemiz Bayeshes, Mipnei Ho'ir, because she's embarrassed with people in the city that could see her. And therefore, Veina Tevel is Gehegen. She won't be Tevel properly because she'll be in a rush. I mean, Bepashtus Advarim, she's not going to be Tevel when people are there. She'll be Tevel when people aren't there. But nevertheless, since it's a harbor, she'll always be afraid that people are going to come and see her. And therefore, she'll be in a rush. So therefore, she shouldn't be Tevel in a harbor. However, if you surrounded her with mats, in other words, there's mechitzas, which she's not going to be uncovered. So then Tevel is normal. Then there's no problem of it being table there. The concern is that if she's going to be table in a place where she'll be concerned that someone may be able to see her, so therefore she'll be rushing. And when she goes into the water, she shouldn't be standing on a klicheres or a salix or similar, because she's afraid she may fall off. And Memela, again, she's not going to be table properly because she's going to be worrying about her balance and being able to stand on these kalim. And if she's going to be afraid and she won't be table properly, so there's a concern as tefillah. So therefore, so she shouldn't do it in a harbor unless it's mokim mutzna. Memela, she shouldn't be afraid. Now that is it. She shouldn't be standing on top of kalim again because we're afraid that she may not do it properly, and therefore the tefillah won't be a proper tefillah. Halacha Yud Beis. Echad ha'adam ve'echad ha'kelim le'yidiyah davar choitzitz binam v'vinamayim. So there's two dinim as we mentioned. There's one din is you have to be completely immersed in the water. There's you have to be completely covered by the water. That's din number one. And now there's another din that the water, there shouldn't be anything separating between you and the water. There was something like cement or dough that was connected to the person. Is so then the keli remains tummy because the pale there was a chtzitza between the water and the keli or the adam. Dvar teira. Now dvar teira, im hoye davar achetzitz chayfetz is reva adam reva keli. So if the davar achetzitz, this chtzitza, covered the entire person or most of the keli, not the entire person, it covered most of the person. Nachamol. Dvar teira im hoye davar achetzitz chayfetz reva adam reva keli. It was covering most of the person or most of the keli. So then lay also la tefillah, then the tefillah wasn't good. Abevahu shiyak pedolav. When do we say that chtzitza causes, if it's reva guf, that it's not a good tefillah? Only if it was reva guf and also it was yak pedolav. What means yak pedolav? V'reitzel havira, he doesn't want to have this chtzitza there. Avalim eni mak pedolav. If he has a chtzitza but eni mak pedolav, v'lisam esi alev ben over ben leover, he doesn't really care whether it's there or it's not there. So then it's eni chetzitz. So then this chtzitza is not a chtzitza. So the din is, again, if a person has a chtzitza which is chayfer reva guf and he's makpid, so then that's a chtzitza min atera. Masha'inkin, if a person has a chtzitza which is covering reva guf, but he's not makpid, it's not a chtzitza. And also, let's say it was chayfer part of the guf. Eini chetzitz, afal pishu makpid olav. Even if he's makpid, so it's also not a chtzitza. So again, if he's reiva guf and he's makpid, then it's a chtzitza min atera. If it's reiva guf and he's any makpid, or it's miyata guf and he is makpid, so it's not a chtzitza. It's not a chtzitza min atera. Now midivri seifrim, however midrabanan, shekol davar achetzitz im hoye makpid olav lei also litvilah afal pishu al miute gzeira mishum rubei. So midrabanan, anything that he is makpid, any chtzitza which he's makpid on, even if it's not guf rubei, it's only miute. So he's also considered a chtzitz. And v'chol davar achetzitz im hoye chayfes ruvei is also litvul afal pisha eni makped olav gzeira mishum rubei makped olav. So midrabanan, even though min atera, the only thing that's considered a chtzitz is only if it's rubei or makped. But midrabanan, if it's rubei ve'eni makped or miut or makped, it's also a chtzitz. Is the mitzvah same? So comes up the pale. Shim hoye ala basar odem al guf odem akeli davar midvar machetzim kim botzik v'zofes u'kiyetzebehem. I feel a tipa kechardel, even if he has a very small amount of something which causes a chtzitza, v'hu makped olav le'osel tefillah. However, v'meini makped olav, if he has a small amount and he's not makped, it's also tefillah. Elim kein hoye chayfes reiva keli, reiva adam k'meshu b'yanu. is noch mal so the maskonas advarim that if it's rubi or makbid, then it's a tzitza b'natera. If it's miute ve'ene makbid, it's say the miut and say ene makbid. Even midrabanan, it's not a tzitza. And if it's rei ve'ene makbid, or it's miut umakbid, so then that's a tzitza midrabanan. That's the maskonas advarim. Maybe just to share that there's a shaila that's asked that the lechura, the din is rube ve'eni makpid, is only a chtzitza midrabanan. The question is, once the rabban instituted that rube ve'eni makpid is a chtzitza midrabanan, so lechura he's makpid, because Lepel right now, he went in and it's a rube ve'eni makpid, but now he's being told that it's considered a chtzitza. So because it's a chtzitza, so he becomes a makpid. So lechura every rube ve'eni makpid, which you're saying to him that it's only chtzitza midrabanan, so lechura should have a din of a rube and makpid, because lepel he's makpid because of the fact that it's a chtzitza midrabanan. So you could tell him maybe that rube and makpid has nothing to do with the din chtzitza. In other words, makpid is neger bepel mamish if he's makpid. Whereas if be'emes it bothers him, the fact that it bothers him because it's a chtzitza could be that doesn't go together of a makpid. That could be a teres. But there's a teres that's Nachiezer, Chaimeze, he writes that the pshat is azay, cheshbon poshet. Since the din is that miut ve'eni makpid is not a chtzitza, so Mela comes out when he has a rube ve'eni makpid. So even if you're saying that it's a l'churi, you're saying, well, he's makpid because lepel it's a chtzitza midrabanan. Good, he's makpid. He's not makpid on the whole rave because lepel, if this rave ve'eni makpid would only be a miut ve'eni makpid, it wouldn't bother him. So what's he makpid on? Only on the miut of this rave ve'eni makpid, which is making it into a rave. So Mela comes out that he doesn't have a rube or makpid. He has a rube ve'eni makpid, and he also has a miut of this rube ve'eni makpid. He also has a miut to makpid because he's makpid on the miut that makes it into a rave, which makes it into a isad rabban. So he has two dinim of midrabban. But lepel minatera, it's a rube ve'eni makpid, and midrabban, it's a rube ve'eni makpid is also a chtzitza, and even you can say that it has a din makpid, he's only makpid on the miut that makes it into a rave, so it's again only a drabban.